Hi, good day, friends. I am Dr. Rakesh Gupta, head of the Department Forensic Medicine and Toxicology, and President Sattva Charitable Sanstha. So, today I would like to speak on bird's eye view of ophthalmic disease and its role in homeopathy. We always knew that the eye is the smallest organ of the body, but it is very difficult to treat in terms of it's a very crucial organ of the body. The reason is it is difficult to convince the patients about the role of homeopathy or the homeopathy can help in eye diseases. There is always a feeling that anything which is related to eye is very crucial and it's an emergency situation, it's a do or die situation, or else a person may lose the eyesight. So overall everybody feels that it should be treated on emergency basis. It's an uncommon journey of a homeopathic physician, because there was lack of complete model or protocols on which homeopathic treatment can be provided. There were not enough reference books which could guide us for treating eye diseases. There was no actually live example where we could just go and see and learn from that person. And only thing is we need to observe the modern medicine ophthalmologist, look how they diagnose the disease, how they clinically come to a conclusion, and over a period of time the observation and just applying homeopathic therapeutics in the practice has helped us to manage the ophthalmic diseases. And many a times there were incidences where you would face discouragement or uh, a kind of discouragement or kind of unmotivating remarks which would uh, take away the zeal to get into ophthalmic practices. Learned ophthalmology as a subject after a lot of self study and working at various government hospitals and volunteering for free medical camps. Main thing which was important for ophthalmic practice was learning the use of various diagnostic tools or diagnostic equipments like direct and indirect ophthalmoscopy, keratometry, using a scan machine, etc., and assisting various ophthalmic experts. So these are various tools which were needed for the diagnosis. So it is a 16 years old journey where I was trained in ophthalmology right from a student's day. Then I was a resident medical officer, then medical officer, then I became a junior consultant, and then later on I was shaped as a senior consultant with the head of the department. So I am just trying to share you my journey which I witnessed. So I express my gratitude to Dr. M.L. Dhavle Rural Homeopathic Hospital as well as Sri Mumbadevi Homeopathic Hospital, and my various teachers, because of whose efforts I could do something in the field of ophthalmology. Dr. Dhavle, Dr. Anand Kapse, Dr. Naveen Pavaskar, and Dr. Jayesh Gharat. So as I have already mentioned that eye appear as a very small organ and its affection can be detrimental. So eye can be affected or involved because of various causes. The most important causes is infection, second is inflammation, then injuries, and congenital origin diseases are also known. So different parts of the eyes often present with different types of symptoms. So example is pain, lacrimation, redness. These are three symptoms which can both be present in conjunctivitis, or they can also be present in keratitis. So difference between a person who's having conjunctivitis and keratitis is about photophobia. Keratitis has intense photophobia. So if a cornea is getting involved, then there is high sensory innervation in the cornea, and that's why the photophobia is very serious kind or very severe, which is not so in a case of conjunctivitis. Other important thing is more superficial tissue involvement, more are the chances of the recovery or reversibility, except in the cases of malignancy or congenital disorders which are related to even the superficial tissues of the eye. There has been efforts in classifying the diseases which may help to approach homeopathically better. So the classification is based on the various category. According to the tissues involved, it is lids and conjunctiva. Second is cornea. Third is lens and capsule. Fourth is sclera. Fifth is uveal tract or ciliary body, choroid, macula, and retina. So according to the cause of the disease can be classified as per the cause like injury, inflammation, infection, malignancy, congenital origin, or because of the aging, which is known as senile diseases. The concept based on which the homeopathic treatment is possible is knowledge of the disease, especially the anatomy, knowledge of the pathophysiology, and the knowledge of clinical examination and diagnostic techniques. So role of clinical examination becomes very important, because when you're doing a clinical examination, we can come across various modalities which may help us in prescribing during the treatment of the particular disease. So when we focus on the anatomy, what we can see is the various parts of the eye. So eye is made up of three coats. Outermost coat is the sclera. Just below the sclera there is choroid, which is highly vascular. Then below the choroid there is a layer of retina, which is a very highly innervated. There's a lot of nerve endings in the retina, and retina is a layer based on which the lights which are coming out from the outside world or the outside of the body goes and falls on the layer of the retina, from where the nerve signals or nerve impulses are carried through the optic nerve, and the image is formed in the brain, which leads to image formation in the brain, and then the person starts seeing it. Especially in the occipital area there is a visual cortex, so everything relays there and the person starts seeing it. The other important thing is the anterior portion. If you can see very clearly, there is a lens which has been there, which is a crystalline structure, and just before a lens there is iris. So iris is getting backward extension into a ciliary body. So iris is 360 degree present, or it is present circumferentially. It is like a shutter which narrows and also broadens. That means it constricts and it gets dilated, and because of this shutter or this iris, there is always a control of intensity of rays of light entering our eye or falling on the capsule of the lens. Okay, so this is iris. So basically iris is a very sensitive and a very fragile structure which has got lot of vascularity. So the tip here is, when the iris gets inflamed, it becomes very, very sticky and spongy kind, and it gets stuck onto the lens. All throughout the lens it can get stuck, and it leads to loss of pigments on the lens, which are seen as iris pigments on the lens. So anytime when you see iris pigments on the lens, it is an indication that there was a history of inflammation of iris, that is known as iritis. Ciliary body. Now if we talk about ciliary body is a structure where there is a production of aqueous humor. From here the aqueous humor travels into the anterior chamber, that is from the ciliary body aqueous humor travels into the anterior chamber, where it gets stored for some time. Aqueous humor is actually rich in nutrition. It has got nutrition for the cornea. At the same time, aqueous humor has some immunoglobulins also in it. Aqueous humor remains in the anterior chamber of the cornea. The reason is aqueous humor is giving the shape, whatever shape our eye has, or the cornea is looking little bulgy, or little elevated, is because of the presence of aqueous humor. So aqueous humor gives integrity or the shape to the eyeball, especially the anterior chamber. And if aqueous humor is not there, then the cornea will look very flat. So it is mainly useful for giving integrity or the shape to the anterior chamber. And aqueous humor is actually drained from the canal of Schlemm, which is located at the anterior aspect of the root of the iris. So just before the iris is getting rooted, just anterior to that, there is a canal of Schlemm. So whenever there is any problem with the angle of the anterior chamber is formed with the posterior aspect of the cornea and the iris getting implanted on the ciliary body. So that angle is known as the anterior chamber or angle. And if there is any problem with this angle, then the drainage of the aqueous humor gets disturbed. So if the drainage gets disturbed, then what happens is the aqueous humor won't be draining into the canal of Schlemm. If it is not draining, then what happens is the aqueous humor will remain in the anterior chamber, and it will increase the pressure of the eye, that is known as increased intraocular pressure, which we call it as glaucoma. So normally the ciliary body is producing aqueous humor, but aqueous humor is getting collected in the anterior chamber, but it is not getting out of the anterior chamber. So excess of accumulation of the aqueous humor in the anterior chamber of the eye leads to increase in the intraocular pressure of the eye, and ultimately leads to rise in the intraocular pressure, which is known as glaucoma. Here, if you can see the lens is attached to the ciliary body with the help of suspensory ligament. So the lens is a central portion of the eye, and it is been held in that particular position because of the presence of the suspensory ligament. If the suspensory ligaments break, the lens will drop down in the inferior direction. Okay, so suspensory ligament holds the lens in position. So here we have spoken about the lens, ciliary body, suspensory ligament, cornea. Cornea is one structure which is devoid of vascularity. So cornea does not have vascularity. Cornea is avascular. So if there is no vessel supplying the cornea, from where the cornea receives its nutrition, cornea receives its nutrition from the aqueous humor and also from the arcade of blood vessels which are situated at sclerocorneal junction. So the nutrition derives from the sclerocorneal junction. So beyond the lens, there is a posterior chamber of the eye, or where below the retina there is a jelly-like structure that is known as vitreous humor. So vitreous humor is like a jelly-like structure which is present in the posterior chamber of the eye, and just behind that there is a retina. Retina has got high nerve tissues there, and plus you can see when you do ophthalmoscopic examination, you can see various vessels are traveling in the bed of the retina. So there we can see various changes which occurs especially in cases of diabetes or hypertensive retinopathy. And in the back side of the retina there is a exit where the optic nerve exit out of the eyeball, and at the same time there is a central retinal artery and the central retinal vein. So this is what we can see in the as far as the anatomy is concerned. So you can see optic nerve, and optic nerve is followed with a central retinal artery and a central retinal vein, and the exit portion is known as an optic disc. So optic disc is a circular structure which is pale yellow in color, and in the center of the disc there is a cup. The cup is the actual area from where the optic nerve and the optic all the nerve and the artery is exiting of the eyeball, and the usually cup and the disc ratio is 0.2 0.3, means the cup is 0.2 or 20% of the disc, entire disc. Normally if the cup size is increasing to 40, 50, 60 gradually, if it keeps on increasing in comparison to the disc, it means there is a pressure which has been exerted on the optic nerve, and there is gradually the optic nerve is getting dried up, or optic nerve is dying. That is known as optic atrophy, and this particular finding is seen in cases of high intraocular pressure, that is known as glaucoma. So the centralmost portion of the entire retina is the macula. Macula is an area which is highly rich in rods and cones. Macula is responsible for the central vision. So whenever you are looking at a particular substance, the centralmost vision is because of the macula. If there is a disease of the macula, what will happen is that you will be able to see a black spot in the center of the vision. So if you look at someone's face, you will see a black spot in the center of that particular person's face. So that means the macula has been fired. So you often see a blind spot or the black spot in the center of the vision. So it's like you can see periphery, but the central vision is compromised if the macula is diseased. So here we have summarized a majority of the structures of the eye. We have revised the anatomy. So now we talk about the structures of the cornea. So what we have to see is that the layers of the cornea, the outermost layer, the anteriormost layer is the epithelium of the cornea. Below the epithelium of the cornea we get Bowman's layer, and below the Bowman's layer we get stroma, and below the stroma you get a Descemet's membrane, and at the last or the innermost layer is the endothelium. So now if you see epithelium, Bowman's layer, then stroma, then Descemet's membrane and endothelium. So here the very important tip is, whenever any injury which extends beyond the stroma, or it crosses the stroma, or it involves the stroma, then the person will develop corneal opacity. So that means if the injury is up to the epithelial layer or the Bowman's layer, then the eye has the ability to regenerate. The person will not develop any kind of white opacity on the cornea. You must be seeing it. If you see many patients, you see there is a scar or the fibrosis on the cornea. That is nothing but is the corneal opacity, and mainly it is after the injury. See, so stroma is one layer of the cornea which is responsible for the transparency. If the cornea's stroma is getting involved, that means the opacity will happen, or the fibrosis or the scarring will take place. So here is an example of the corneal opacity. If you can see it very clearly. So the entire concept is, there is an injury, then there is inflammation, and post-inflammation there is fibrosis and the scar formation, which is adherent scarring, which leads to dense white opacity because of the post-inflammatory fibrous tissue deposition. So this opacity actually involves all the layers of the cornea, and it is a permanent damage. So in this scenario, to entirely get rid of the opacity, and there is a permanent damage, and that is a condition where you may require corneal grafting or something. So here we have to understand the concept of reversibility versus irreversibility. So then this is a structurally irreversible disease. If you understand it clearly, it will be structurally irreversible disease. So now we talk about the corneal foreign body injury, case of a corneal foreign body injury. So there was a case where a person comes with the right eye pain, watering, and the foreign body sensation in the right eye. So basically there was nothing, but if you can see very clearly, there we have got a green color stains on the cornea, and the one which I have been circled is the area where the corneal injury has taken place, and there is a foreign body over that area. the green color, when you do a green color stain, this green color stain is nothing but fluorescent stain. So any area on the cornea which has undergone scratching or some kind of laceration or injury will, or denudation of the epithelium, that particular area will pick up the fluorescent stain. And if you can see here very clearly, this fluorescent staining is in the at around 5 o'clock position, okay, almost near to 6 o'clock position. That means there was a foreign body and it has scratched the epithelium of the cornea, and if you can see, the foreign body is still present there. So the role of ophthalmic examination is very important. So if a corneal foreign body prominently is seen on fluorescent stain and there is an inflammatory reaction which is also present, so the patient will definitely present with symptoms like photophobia and pain, because as I have already mentioned, photophobia is very significantly seen in corneal diseases in comparison to other diseases, because cornea is high and very sensitive, innervated, highly sensitively innervated because of the presence of lot of nerves around in the cornea. So patient will predominantly present with foreign body sensation, pain and photophobia. So here the treatment strategy consists of removal of the foreign body. Either you remove the foreign body first, because as we have mentioned that until unless we don't remove the maintaining cause of the disease, the other symptoms will also not settle down, however an amount of medicine you are providing to the patient. So first concept is the removal of the foreign body, and the second concept is using the homeopathic medicines to treat the secondary dynamic affections or secondary dynamic symptoms which have been produced, like pain, photophobia, watering, foreign body sensation, etc., etc. So conceptually, if you understand, this disease is classified as surgical disease with one-sided expression with secondary dynamic affection. So now first step, if you want to understand, what we will do is we'll go and see how do we remove the foreign body from the eye. So we'll go to the video and we will just find out. So if you can see, now the patient is complaining of photophobia. So what we have done is we have localized the foreign body by doing a fluorescence. So it is around 4 to 5 o'clock position. What I have done is, I have taken a needle which is 26 number needle. I have mounted it on the syringe. I am trying to with a very delicate hand, I am trying to shift the foreign body. You see my direction of the hand movement. Once again, you try to see it very carefully. So what we are trying to do is we are just trying to shift the foreign body from the center to periphery. Okay, from center to periphery. Always remember the removal of the foreign body has to be from central to periphery, because we always want the central cornea to be safe, because if we try to go in the reverse direction, what we will do, we will scratch the central most portion of the cornea, and what happens is, in such situation, what will happen is, once the central portion of the cornea is getting scratched, or so this is a portion from where the rays of light is going to enter your eyes. So central most portion of the cornea is basically responsible. If you can see, there is a fundal glow which was seen because the light was being put through the the pupil. So you could see a fundal glow. So that indicates there is no obstruction in the media right from the cornea till the retina. Okay. So the centralmost portion of the retina is very important, because if there is a scratch at that level, then you will in fact induce the opacification or haziness. So here now, after removing or dislodging the body, I am trying to give an eye wash, so that whatever the sediments or the leftover particles are there in the eye can be easily tackled, and or it can be just removed or dislodged from the eye. So that is the entire agenda of doing it. So this is how we remove the foreign body. So this is the first step. Until unless you don't remove the foreign body, that means there is a maintaining cause is still present in the eye, and even if you give medicine, how the patient is going to feel relieved? Medicine will not be able to tackle the symptoms. The first thing is the removal of the maintaining cause. Okay. So now we go on to the second step of the treatment. So now the second step of the management is the homeopathic treatment, which can be given after you have removed the foreign body. So here, if you take the rubric selection, eye injuries from incision or laceration. If you can see that in the slide, you can see the eye injuries from foreign body. The remedies which are there is aconite, arnica, silica. The eye injuries from the incision, if you can see, there is Staph aureus, and eye injuries from the laceration, you can see Acerem, Hypericum and Staph aureus. So Clark's Dictionary to Practical Materia Medica, we tried differentiating Acerem europaeum. There is inflammation and burning in the lids, especially the canthi. The person's eyes are very much relieved by bathing with cold water, but very sensitive to cold air and sunshine and light and wind in any form. So eye is very sensitive to any form of stimulus to the eye, but patient is better by cold water bathing. There is a dryness on the interior portion of the eye, and there are severe pains which is leading to lacrimation and sensitivity to light. So that's what is Acerem europaeum. Hypericum is a very good remedy where there is burning and sticking pain in the eyes, and there is often the styes which are present in the eyelid. Whereas in Staph aureus, if you can read very carefully, there is lacrimation laceration of the cornea with prolapse of the iris, and it usually happens after the operation, and that is also the cataract operation. There is iritis with bursting pain in the eyeball, temples and the side of the face, and it is aggravated by in the evening or the morning or any form of light. So if you understand the depth of this particular drug, is that it leads to laceration of the cornea and there is a prolapse of iris, and especially post-operative cases it is very helpful, and there is iritis, so iris and ciliary body is also getting involved. So after going through these references, what we thought is Staph aureus is more suitable in cases where there is currently in this case where there is a laceration or the injury to the cornea. So the remedy which we started was homeopathic medicine, Staph aureus 200, which was prescribed every 1 hourly. Patient was symptomatically much better in a period of 48 hours, and if you can see very clearly, there is a slight epithelial denudation which will be taken care after a while by the body, and the nerve the epithelium will regenerate over it. So Staph aureus is a very important remedy for any form of corneal injuries. What is important is there is no circumcorneal congestion. The person's pain and other symptoms had settled down, and patient was quite comfortable. So caution, what we need to keep in mind while treating eye diseases is, first is, in clinical practice, photophobia can be mistaken for conjunctivitis, and it may lead to negligence, and we may confuse that it is a conjunctival disease, but there may be an underlying corneal disease. So whenever there is patient presenting with photophobia, you should not just take it blindly that it is conjunctivitis. We should also look for some form of corneal pathologies, because corneal pathologies are very common in such patients who are presenting with photophobia. So there is another case which is a case of ophthalmic emergency. You are doing your duties and suddenly one kind of ophthalmic emergency knocks your door. It's a case of corneal laceration with hypopyon, with iritis and posterior synechiae with pupillary capture with complicated cataract. So if you see, there are multiple terminologies used in this particular case. So there is injury to cornea, there is hypopyon, there is iritis also, posterior synechiae, pupillary capture and complicated cataract. So let's understand each and everything while we are going through the case. So this is a case where the patient presented with acute congested swollen watering of the eye with visual loss of, and then involving the left eye. So he is a 45 years old fisherman who reported to the casualty with a history of injury to the left eye, and the injury was because of the iron wire which had taken place. This injury had taken place while he was fishing around 2 weeks back. So the main complaint which he presented with was left eye redness, swelling, lacrimation, pain and visual loss, and that was after an injury. So the patient had tremendous difficulty in opening the eye. The eye was very sensitive to the light, and there was a lot of pain in the left eye which was stitching type. He could not open his eye. He would get aggravated with light, any form of cold air, and he was better by warmth. So if you can see the photograph, clinically what we can see is both the lids are edematous, there is a lot of congestion, there is lacrimation, photophobia, and PRPL is present. PRPL means projection of rays or projection of light, both are present. So what do you mean by PR and PL? Projection of rays means when you are doing a torchlight examination and the person's eye is being focused with this torch, what happens is then and you move the light from one direction to another direction. So first of all you ask whether he can see the light. If he sees the light, that means PL is present, projection of light is present. And if you are moving the torch and you ask him to identify from which direction the torch light is coming, and he is able to do that, that is known as projection of rays. So when you do PR and PL, the entire concept is to look for the viability or the life of the retina, whether the retina is dead or the retina is alive. So by doing PRPL, we come to know that the retina is intact and the retina is not detached, or there is no major pathology of the retina. So when you do a macroscopic examination in this particular case, what you can see is you can see some crescentric structure in the bottom of the eye. Now for this moment you just assume that it's a crescentric shadow which is there in the inferior portion of the eye, and in the center you can see some white shadow. Now these two things we'll understand what it is. So now when we went into the microscopic examination, what we found a cut at the 8 o'clock position, that is known as a corneal laceration at the 8 o'clock position. Now we do a second microscopic examination. This photograph is giving us a lot of detail about the disease. What we can see is that crescentric portion which we were seeing on the macroscopic examination is nothing but it's a pus in the anterior chamber, that is a hypopyon. So that means the anterior chamber of the eyeball is having the pus in it. Okay, so that is nothing but it is known as hypopyon, and just above that what we can see the small dots, and in the central portion of the pupil, those dots are nothing but it's iris pigments. So which I had already mentioned to you that whenever the iris gets inflamed, that is known as iritis, then it starts shedding its pigments on the lens. So these pigments have been stuck on the lens, so this is known as iris pigments. And what we can see, the the iris has become little muddy, that means it is congested. Muddy means congested because it is brown in color, and if the vascularity increases it looks little muddy or congested. And in the centralmost portion, that is the pupillary area, where we can see a grey reflex, that is a white color glow, that is known as grey reflex. It is mainly because there is a cataract, and that cataract is a complicated cataract which is mainly happened after there was an injury to the cornea, and after there was an injury to the cornea, the infection entered the anterior chamber, and the infection after entering the anterior chamber led to the pus formation, which is known as hypopyon. And after the hypopyon and all is formed, there is inflammation of the iris, and this inflammation of the iris is resulting into the shedding of the iris pigments, and this iris pigment got stuck onto the lens, and gradually the complicated cataract took place. So this is how there is a chain of reaction or the sequence of the disease formation. So if you can see, when we were trying to dilate the eye by using the dilating drops, you can see there are some portion of the iris which has got permanently stuck onto the lens, and then there is a adhesion of the iris onto the lens, that is known as posterior synechiae. Since it is on the lens is on the posterior aspect and it is got stuck onto the lens, and this particular pathology is known as posterior synechiae. That means adherence of the iris, or the iris is getting stuck to the lens, and which is in the posterior aspect of the eye. So that's why it is known as posterior synechiae. So now on slit lamp examination or microscopic examination, what we saw was circumcorneal congestion. That means all around the cornea there was a congestion. Photophobia, which we had seen. Corneal laceration we saw at 8 o'clock position. Then we saw pus in the anterior chamber, that is known as hypopyon. Then we saw that pupil is not reacting to light, it has got fixed, and there is a posterior synechiae, which is because of the iris getting stuck to the lens, and there are iris pigments onto the lens, and there is a cataract, which is a complicated cataract. So you have understood all these particular points, So there's so many pathology in our eye, So now the challenge is, once we have diagnosed the case, how do we treat this case? So here again the knowledge of anatomy is very important. I think we have already brushed up everything, but we may quickly go through the anatomy. I have already mentioned that cornea is the anteriormost portion, but it is transparent. So take home message is no vascularity to the cornea. If the vascularity forms on the cornea, that means there is some inflammation. If there is damage to the cornea beyond the stroma layer, that means there is opacification. This is the take home message today. So cornea, as I have already mentioned, it's a protective clear layer of the eye. Light will enter through the cornea and it gets refracted or passes through the lens, and then it falls onto the retina. So curvature of the cornea is very important. It helps to focus the rays onto the lens. So we cannot play with the curvature of the cornea. So there was an injury, it had distorted or it had disrupted the protective layer of the eye. Okay, so that is the cornea. After the injury, the infection entered into the eye and there is a pus formation. So patient had already visited with this particular pathology to the ophthalmologist, and it was not getting better with all the treatment which he had given, and that is why he came to us. So before we started the treatment, what we wanted to see, how is the posterior segment of the eye. That means even if you settle the corneal inflammation and then you treat the pus and eventually the cataract is also taken care. What is important, if this particular phenomena is extended to the posterior segment of the eye or the retina, and we are not aware because there is a lens is completely opacified, so we can't even see what is there in the posterior segment of the eye. Okay, so that can be seen by doing a sonography, which is known as USG B scan of the eye, and there we found that there is no retinal detachment or there is no vitreous hemorrhage in the posterior segment. So the tonometry was done later on. Tonometry is nothing but it's a method of detecting the eye pressure or intraocular pressure. So right eye, that was 13.6, and left eye it was little elevated, 14.2. So the tonometry showed that there is an injury and there is all the pathology in the eye, the slight elevation of the IOP. So the diagnosis is very clear. I have already mentioned it's a corneal laceration with hypopyon, with iritis, with posterior synechiae, with pupillary capture, with complicated cataract.